Welcome to the Property Pendulum, brought to you by Domain and Fear and Greed, the podcast that tells you which way the property market is going to swing and how to make the most of it. I'm Michael Thompson, and I'm joined by Alice Stolz, National Property Editor at Domain and one of Australia's foremost experts on all things real estate, known, of course, to audiences around the country for her work on Nine, including The Block. Hello, Alice.
Hello, Michael.
Now, Alice, today's episode is not going to mince words about this. It is all about maximising the price that you can get for your home when you're selling. And one way to do that, as we know, is to really heighten that personal connection, to really kind of make a potential buyer feel like this could actually be their new home, to help them kind of picture themselves living in the property. So today, we are putting together a list, and I love a good list, and today's is a cracker. 7 items to remove from your home when you are selling. And the key is, Alice, at this point, if you are selling your property right now in the current market, you really need to be doing everything you can to get buyers invested in your place, don't you?
You do indeed at any time of the year, but I think never more so than that spring season. At the moment, we're seeing a huge uptick on listings, certainly in what they have been over the past couple of years. So what that means is for sellers is that there's a lot of competition out there. So if you don't manage to sort of create that elusive emotional connection quite quickly with a would-be buyer, they're most likely just to head around the corner and find another option pretty easily.
Yeah, because there is that choice, isn't it? Why is that personal connection so important? Is it just all about trying to, exploit emotions, but let's just say maximize that emotional connection? Is it that you just want buyers to feel like they could be living there? Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, it is as simple as that, but I think it can actually be a bit deeper than that too, that when you know that feeling of when something sort of moves you in your heart and it becomes head and heart when you fall in love with something, that pull for it, the things you'll do to get it just really increase dramatically. And before you know it, you're kind of willing to walk through fire to get your hands on those keys. So I suppose that's kind of what you're hoping to do when it comes to presenting a house if you're selling.
I love the fact that we are now talking about such extreme measures as walking through fire in order to get it. It feels like the perfect segue into our list for today of our 7 items that you should remove from your home if you are a seller, if you are listing it. And so this is all happening before the first open, before anyone else sets foot inside your house.
And Michael, before we kick off, I think it's important to say here, I'm not trying to absolve myself, but please, no one shoot the messenger here, because this is a tough gig for people to do. Like, doing things ready, getting your house ready to pass on to someone else is not easy. No matter how long you've lived in that house for, chances are you've got wonderful, hopefully very good, rich memories in that place. And it can be a really massive thing to do. We know that people equate selling or moving a house sort of up there with things like divorce and death and all sorts of dramatic things in life like that. So be gentle on oneself. There are professionals if people need to go down that route in life, but I do think this is a good sort of framework when it comes time to selling, to how you can approach it and kind of do it as gracefully as possible and with as much tenderness to oneself.
Yeah, you kind of forget the emotional connections that you've formed yourself as well, and you become kind of blind to the parts of your house that are quite unique, or that really are specific to you and your family and your memories there, and you kind of become blind to that.
Yeah.
And really this process is about separating yourself a little bit from that and trying to picture somebody else being in that property and allowing them to picture themselves being there. Number 1 on the list is probably the most obvious, I would say, the visible clutter.
It is the most obvious visible clutter. Like, that's the thing you trip over all the time. It's the thing that, your spouse or partner it may annoy you that there's that pile of growing things on that table in the dining room or whatever. But it's a really important factor, because really that is usually the thing that makes people think, does this house have storage? Is there enough space for all my stuff? Yes or no? And quite clearly, if there's not enough space, adding in storage to a house that might be a sort of a, tightish footprint, it's complicated to do. So I think that's the number one thing that people think, I can't even look at this house. I will never be able to fit all my stuff in, off the list. Forget it. So you need to get all that stuff out of the way and make sure your house is flowing and you can access hallways and bedrooms without having to wait for other people to walk past or around you in that first wave of things to do.
I love that. It's such a real estate description, a tightish footprint. It's really just like a fancy way of saying if it is a bit small,
Yep.
then you can you can disguise it. And even the idea of removing the microwave from the kitchen, because no one will notice that a microwave is not there. It's not something that you go in kind of looking for. But all of a sudden, if a great whopping microwave is taking up half the bench space, you will notice that.
And I think definitely in the kitchen. So all that stuff you keep on your bench, you know, that canister of all the utensils in it, the toaster, the coffee machine, the water thing, all that stuff, as well as a pile of school forms at the end of the bench, all that goes in a drawer and out of sight. Now, of course, day to day, you absolutely will use that, and you're not being disingenuous by hiding those things, but it just makes everything look cleaner, neater, tidier, and more sort of breeze-worthy, so to speak, to live in.
Yeah, indeed. And it's just about getting it out, get it right out, get it away from the house. Don't stack it kind of out the back. Don't kind of stack it anywhere that anyone's going to see. Don't stack it in the garage or anything. Just get it off site. If you can leave it at a friend's house, a family member's house, if you need to get a storage unit just for a couple of months or something, just hide it away. Pretend it doesn't exist.
Pretend it doesn't exist. I love that idea. Look, one of the things that I think about when I think most about getting a house ready for sale is living in it like you're on holidays. Now, what I mean by that is you sort of move a lot of stuff out, put it in storage or your parents' place or your sister's place or your brother-in-law around the corner in their place, if they're very kind to you. And then you sort of live in this very streamlined world with a bit of a smallish suitcase and only the bare essentials that you need during that campaign. It makes the whole process a lot easier, but you will feel like you're on holidays within your own house.
Yeah, because the thing is, generally speaking, people can't afford to move out of their home during this period as well, because it could be a couple of months. It could be longer. And it's not necessarily an option to actually just leave.
No, it was remiss of me not to say that. Ideally, people would all leave their house when they're about to list their house for sale. However, the cost of it, by the time you add everything else associated with moving, is incredibly expensive. So most of us can't afford to do that. So I think it is about doing the smart things that will mean that you can stay in that house as effortlessly as possible as you list the property, and then even during the campaign to sell it.
Number 2 on the list. I love this one. Quirky homewares. So this kind of goes back to what I mentioned before about kind of having a blind spot, like not realizing that the things that have been in the house with you for the last 10 years might actually be a little bit strange. And someone is going to come in, and anything that distracts a potential buyer from the flow of the house or from the house itself and starts making them focus on the stuff that you have collected as the person that's been living there for the last decade, it's probably got to go.
That is exactly right. And I don't think we should make assumptions here. Now, what you think is good taste, Michael, might be different from me. And we just have to be very, to be very thick-skinned and assume that no one necessarily is going to love that sort of weird cuckoo clock we bought in Switzerland 20 years ago as much as we do, perhaps. So I think remove anything that has a bit too much personality, a bit too much individuality, and if in doubt, leave it out, in my opinion. Now, there is this caveat here, I can say, because sometimes when a home is particularly well furnished, that bit of personality can actually work in your favour, because when you start looking at lots of houses, they can all begin to feel very vanilla and very plain. However, I think the word quirky is the operative one here, and quirky really means that sort of stuff that you probably, if you're being honest with yourself, you might actually think twice about. And if in doubt, you need to ask a very trusted, kind friend to give you the advice and ask them what is quirky, what might put someone off, and take their advice.
Can I give you an example of by far the quirkiest thing I've ever seen when inspecting a house? 2 words for you. Haunted terrarium.
Oh my God.
So we walk into this house, and it has kind of the ground floor, essentially, it's kind of a split level property, and everything's looking kind of normal on that level. We go down the stairs into what is kind of a basement, kind of also then goes out onto the backyard. But in under the stairs is a glassed in terrarium that was pitch black with a few plants and God knows what else. They might have had lizards in there. They might have had snakes. They might have had like an evil kind of twin living in there. I don't know.
I'm thinking that had like black widow spiders and tarantulas in it, by the way you're why you're saying that.
God, it was.
And I mean, imagine the trauma to
I
children.
still see it in my dreams.
Imagine your children if they'd walked in and said, I mean, there's no way, no smudge stick would get rid of that bad juju in the house. I don't think.
It really sums up kind of this idea that if something distracts you from the flow of the house, it distracts you from everything else. The fact that all the bedrooms were really nice, the bathroom was great, the kitchen was really nice and spacious. The only thing I remember is the haunted terrarium.
That's it. And I think we also set when people have inconsistencies in their house. So if the house is all lovely in a certain sort of nice sort of, shabby chic style, let's just say for the sake of this argument, and that all feels quite good and lovely, but then you go down to the basement level or there's sort of a bar room, and in it is every kind of baseball paraphernalia from the past 40 years. And even if you're a sports fan, there's something weird about that because it sort of, it knocks you off kilter. You're left thinking, hang on a minute.
Yes.
But the upstairs had this cream and pistachio coloured lovely calm kitchen, and so are the bedrooms and the living room. And now what's this? Like, this is like sitting there like a shag on a rock.
Yeah.
And I think what happens is you're sort of left being a bit sort of skeptical, I suppose, of the house itself. What else am I not seeing? What else am I missing here?
Yeah.
Something is not right. And it plants this seed of doubt that whether you're conscious or it's subconscious or conscious or not, it exists nonetheless. And it's that keeps a person thinking in the middle of the night, something's not right about that house. I can't put my finger on it. I'm going to walk away from it.
Yeah. Yeah. You want it just to be as vanilla really, as you probably can. And because not every buyer that walks in there is going to be looking for a place to house their lizards.
That's right.
In that terrarium.
Unless you're the Addams family or something, I guess.
Yes, and that is targeting a buyer very, very successfully. Number 3 on the list, photos and personal items. I get this. I completely understand it because I'm very, very nosy. When I go to inspect a place, I am checking out all the photos on the wall. I'm checking out kind of everything that I can see. And all of a sudden, if you're seeing wedding photos and you're seeing family photos and holiday snaps and all these kinds of things, it's just this constant reminder that this is someone else's home. And it's harder to see yourself living there, isn't it?
Completely. I think too much of that personality coming through again is really going to put people off. So you need to put any signs of who you are and your children and your friends and family away. Because also if you've got photos of you, I'm sure, Michael, you've got some wonderful photos of yourself doing laps in a Ferrari around a race track in Iceland, for example.
Yeah.
And then someone walks in and is like, oh, that's the sort of person that owns this house. That's what he's like. It might work in favour for some people, but equally other people might be left going, oh, I don't know about this person. So again, it's the consistency of ensuring that all the dots can be connected fairly easily.
Yeah. And number 4, cupboard contents. Removing the contents from your cupboards. It kind of links back to the visible clutter. This is almost the invisible clutter. Do people really open cupboards? I know I say I'm nosy, but
Michael,
I'm asking a question to which I know the answer, of course.
I am guilty as charged. And if you're not opening cupboards, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, I'm too busy looking at the photos on the wall.
I'm not suggest you go through the top of their dressing table drawer with gloves on rifling for things that you might find interesting. I'm talking about opening it up to ensure that there's decent hanging space, or understanding, does it actually go to the ceiling, or is it covering a pipe, that cupboard or something? That is completely legitimate. But I can't tell you anything more that gives me an ick more than when I open a cupboard up and I see it filled to the brim, and all I can think of, oh my God, that's where they've shoved everything to get this house ready for sale. Yeah. And many people do it. So again, this is another box that will go to that lovely person around the corner who's going to harbour your goods for a period of time. There'll just be a box of it, big plastic box with all that stuff in it. So it's not taking up that cupboard space, because I do really think that people look at it and then they sort of go, I know what's happening here.
We had a friend when we were selling a place, and this was the house, the apartment that we had been living in. We had a friend come in to do a once-over, just to have a look through a very impartial, very direct, really quite blunt when she needs to be, friend. So she came through, and the first thing she did was go to the wardrobes in the bedrooms, open them up, and she goes, no, this won't do. This is full. Because she said straight up, she could see that we hadn't hidden stuff away in there. It was just full of our kind of clothes and everyday kind of stuff. She goes, no, I want to see that this has actually got enough space for me to have my stuff in here. I don't want to see this. It was a bit of a surprise to see that the first thing she did was went and opened the cupboard, because we kind of thought maybe it's off limits.
Yeah.
Very naive.
Yeah, and it's such, particularly if you've got a family, it's such an insight into how people live. Like if you see one person's wardrobe overflowing into the others, you're sort of like, okay, I sort of see what's going on here. But I do think it's a really important factor of it. And all that to say also, you don't need to empty everything. It's just having it neat and orderly without it feeling like it's absolutely bursting at the seams.
Yeah, good tip. At number 5, pet stuff. Why is this important? Because it feels as though there would be a certain amount of tolerance for pet items being around the house.
There is indeed. A little dog bed or a little cat basket, I think probably is in the realm of okay. I still wouldn't do it though, just for the record. But there is this different idea when people have all sorts of bells and whistles, excuse the pun, for the cat or dog. So we've seen cat gyms, dog exercise routes in the back garden, like, those little wheels and ramps that they run about on and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That has just left people thinking, am I walking into a dog breeder's house? And again, dog breeders, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But again, you're trying to portray an air of professionalism about the house that you're living in. And not everybody loves dogs and cats. I do really have to say that. And I think we know that people have allergies. Some people think that the smell or fur in a house, you can never quite get it out. So you sort of want to disguise Fido's basket and bed. And I just think act a bit like that gorgeous, much cherished pet doesn't exist just for that period of time.
Yeah, especially because it can be as simple as someone just isn't a dog person or isn't a cat person, and you want to just make the appeal of your property as broad as you possibly can.
That's right.
Isn't it? It's again, a fairly kind of simple thing.
And I hasten to add also is that sometimes people have got little doggy doors for the dog or cat or whatever to go through. That's absolutely fine. What I'm talking about is loose items that are left around the house is what you kind of just want to pop away for those visits and photos.
Number 6 on the list. I reckon this could be borderline controversial. It is the home office or the study. And I'm curious about this because I would have thought in the post-pandemic era, the work from home era, that showing that you've got kind of space for a study or a good kind of private home office setup would actually be a good thing.
Yeah, look, studies are a funny thing because for many years they almost became passé and out of date. And then, of course, during the pandemic, they were one of the most searched for words that people were looking for when it came to their houses. And they had a complete renaissance during the pandemic, and they really still have sort of retained a really quite high priority on most buyers' lists. However, again, when we're thinking about attracting as many people as possible, having a spare bedroom and having it set up as such, everybody knows you can easily put a desk in. Whereas I think the bedroom, people are left thinking, God, is that going to fit a double bed in it? Will it fit a bedside table? Is there a built-in robe there? All sorts of questions. They start going down that path that you really don't want them to go in because really they're negotiating with themselves about why that house isn't right for them or why they shouldn't pay that much for the house. So while having a study is really, truly wonderful, I just think when it comes to selling, you want to have as many bedrooms as possible with everybody knowing full well they can easily flip it back to become a study if that suits their needs.
All right, so better just to say it's a bedroom, show that it's a bedroom, show that it can fit everything needed to be a bedroom, and then people can draw their own conclusions. Correct.
Can I also say one thing on this topic of beds? Let your children enjoy the fact that you're going to get rid of their single bed for a period of time. They'll think this is like Christmas. You're going to win Parent of the Year for this one, Michael. Take out their little single bed that's, like a little soldier's bed and put in a double bed when you're selling the house because you want that room to feel like it's big enough to house a double bed.
Great tip.
And of course, I'm not saying that all 6-year-olds should be in double beds. If they are, good for them. But I just think when you're selling, you want to make sure you've got an ample size bed in there because that way a buyer's left thinking, great, that's the spare room for the in-laws to stay in. It will house them comfortably. I'm not going to hear any back chat from my lovely mother-in-law, for example.
That's fantastic advice. That's like 0.6.5 on our list. It feels like we managed to sneak a bonus kind of tip into that one. Let's move to number 7, backyard junk. So we're talking about kind of clutter and building materials and garden tools and things. Again, things that you don't notice if you've been living there for a decade and there's a pile of bricks that were there when you moved in. And I'm speaking from experience here. There is this pile of bricks that occasionally when I need a brick, I know that they're there, but they don't register on a daily basis. Get rid of it, right?
Michael, I can't believe you're that person with that pile of bricks. It's
a small pile.
Oh my gosh. It took me years to get my husband to get rid of the pile of bricks. So the pile of bricks absolutely has to go. I cannot state that enough. But also all those sort of sleepers and logs that are just lolling about and lying about, that sort of thing that broke and you thought, I'll fix it one day, the bike without a chain on it, it has all got to go. Again, you're going to have to go, in this case, to the tip. I think it's just time to throw this stuff out, all right? Now, I know this is sounding harsh, but someone's got to say it because this is the sort of stuff that leaves people thinking, wow, is there squatters living here? Does anyone take care or pride in this property? Or have they just done it up to quickly sell it and actually underneath it all, it's all sort of a bit of a dog's breakfast? So also remember that for many people, the outdoor space, the garden, ends up being an extension to the house, another sort of living area, as it were. So you really need to make that space come up beautifully. I really get very sad about this because I think so many people put all this attention on their house internally and just forget the garden outside. And people are left going, oh, like what's just happened here? You know, you're disappointing people and you want to take them on that journey and really deliver right until the end.
In defense of my pile of bricks, they're very useful. Like you can do a bit of paving, you can plug kind of gaps in the fence. Petty vandalism, it's good to send a message to someone you don't like. Just a brick through the window.
Mate, I've heard it all before. I'm just not buying it. Like I'll live without the bricks, and I've told my husband he can go to the quarry when he needs one. And
all right, I shall put the bricks on the list of things that must be removed. I am not getting any support for my brick pile there. That's a good list. 7 things. Visible clutter, quirky homewares, photos and personal items, cupboard contents, pet things, home offices or studies, and backyard junk. It's a fairly comprehensive list, but you're right. You do just need to be a bit detached, don't you? You need to take a step back and not let yourself be too personally invested in it because you want someone else to become personally invested.
Exactly. What you want them to do is try to manifest themselves living in that house and living happily ever after. You know what's funny about this topic, though, is that so often we think about what is it that makes a house a home, and we talk about ways to make the house that you're in feel wonderful and a sense of ownership and calm and a true sanctuary. But in this case, what you're trying to do is, I guess, see your property as a house and not a home. And you're trying to see it through those potential buyers' eyes. And yes, it will always have a special place in your heart, but you are now sort of consciously uncoupling from it, so to speak, and letting it go for the next person.
Oh, great advice. Thank you very much, Alice.
Thank you, Michael.
That was real estate expert Alice Stolz, national property editor at Domain, and I'm Michael Thompson. Make sure you're following the podcast, and we'll be back next week with another episode of The Property Pendulum, brought to you by Domain and Fear and Greed, the podcast that tells you which way the property market is going to swing and how to make the most of it.